In 1815, a man named Nathan Rothschild made the equivalent of $600 million in a single day. Not from a business deal, not from an invention, but from a war. While soldiers were dying at Waterloo, Rothschild already knew Britain had won before anyone else did. He walked into the London Stock Exchange and brought everything. By the time the news hit the public, he owned a significant chunk of the British economy. One day, one war, and he made generational wealth that still exists today. I'm not telling you that to celebrate what he did, but I'm telling you because it exposes something most people are never taught. War doesn't destroy money, it moves it. It has always moved it. Before I keep going, I need to say something real quick. My husband served in the United States Marine Corps. He was deployed to operations in Iraq. So when we talk about war in this space, we're not doing it from a place of ignorance. We know what it costs, and it's not all financial. What's happening right now with Iran is serious. Lives, real lives are on the line. Our prayers go out to every single family that is touched by this. So this video isn't about celebrating any of that. It's about making sure your family doesn't get blindsided by what conflict does to the economy, because nobody ever teaches you that. If anything, we are bombarded with social media and news to keep us in fear, while many other people are understanding what's really going on. The families that get hurt the most financially in moments like this, they're usually the ones with no clue what's really happening economically or what's coming, and they have no plan for when it does. And that is why we are here. We are here to change that. And later in this video, I'm going to show you how to get our family blueprint starter guide, which is a structured framework for generational wealth. If this kind of content speaks to you, where we pull back the curtain on financial systems and expose what most people never get taught, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Let me show you the pattern, because it's been the same for over 200 years. Back in World War II, America entered in 1941, still clawing out the Great Depression. Employment was above 14% and families were barely holding on. But between 1940 and 1945, the US GDP doubled. Companies like General Motors, Boeing, Standard Oil, and other government contracts came to be worth billions. The Dow Jones even started a bull run that lasted decades. Regular families were rationing butter and sugar, while defense contractors were building dynasties, many of which are around today. Remember the Gulf War in 1990? Iraq invaded Kuwait and oil spikes overnight. If you owned oil futures before the invasion, you made a fortune in weeks. But if you panicked, sold when the news broke, you locked in losses. Right before one of the strongest recoveries of the decade, the S&P gained over 30% that following year. Iraq in 2003, Halliburton, the massive oilfield service giant, made over $7 billion in contracts in the first year alone. Stock went from under $20 to over $40 in less than 2 years. You see, the average American family felt it at the pump. Meanwhile, positioned investors felt it in their portfolio much differently. Recently, we had the conflict in Ukraine in 2022. Defense ETFs were up over 30% within months. Lockheed Martin up 40% in the single year. Natural gas tripled, gain futures exploded. Why? Because Ukraine feeds nearly 10% of the world. If you understood the supply chain, you saw opportunity. If you didn't, you just saw your grocery bill go up. And now we have Iran. We're watching it happen in real time. The Strait of Hormuz is where 20% of the world's oil moves through. Energy markets are already moving. Defense sector is already moving, and most families are just watching the news, feeling uneasy, and doing absolutely nothing. Do you see the pattern yet? Every major conflict in modern history, every single one, ended in a transfer of wealth. Not destruction, but a transfer. From the unprepared to the prepared, from the emotional to the strategic, from the ones who reacted to the one already positioned. And that transfer doesn't care about your politics. It doesn't care about your feelings. It does not care whether you think it's justified, and you're allowed to feel however you want to feel about that. Just understand that the transfer, it just moves. We don't just study this, we live it. Do you remember when COVID hit? The market drops were over 30% in weeks. People panicked. They pulled their money out. They sat on cash and they waited. By the end of 2020, the market fully recovered. 2021 saw brand new all-time highs. Interest rates dropped to historic lows, and while most people were still frozen, still waiting to see how things played out, we locked in a rental property at 3.25% and another one at 3.99%. Not because we weren't paying attention, but we were paying very, very close attention to something else. We begin to understand something that most people never get taught. The crisis creates discounts, and discounts don't wait for you to get comfortable. So let's talk about right now. There is active conflict in the Middle East. Global tension is elevated. Markets are uncertain, while rates are sitting around 6 to 7%. And people are nervous. Again, I get it. I really do. But I have to ask you something honest. If rates drop tomorrow because of the global instability, what would you actually do? Would you refinance? Buy a property? Would you invest? Or would you just freeze like you did last time? No judgment, just truth. Because what I've learned watching these cycles is the crisis doesn't destroy families financially. It's the lack of preparation before the crisis that does. And many times what we do during the crisis as well, that can either propel us or keep us exactly where we are. The families who lost the most financially during COVID, they weren't even the ones hit the hardest by the virus. They were the ones with no liquidity, no plan, no idea how money moves, when everything felt chaotic. Playing defense with no playbook is not the way to keep operating. So what does being prepared actually look like? It looks like having money you can get to that isn't at the mercy of what the market does tomorrow. It looks like knowing that when things go on sale, and they always go on sale when people are scared, you can move on the opportunity. That's the difference between position families and everyone else. They don't predict the crisis. Nobody does. They just prepare for the opportunity every crisis creates, because that opportunity always shows up every time. The only variable is whether you were ready when it does. 200 years ago, one man moved an entire family's wealth in a single day during a war that has played out in every major conflict since. World War II, the Gulf War, Iraq, Ukraine, and it's playing out right now. The question was never if another crisis was coming. The question is, which side of the transfer is your family going to be on? If you want to learn how we actually prepare for moments like this, not react, but prepare, we put together our Family Blueprint Starter Guide. It's a structured framework for generational wealth, and it breaks down exactly what we teach families. The links will be posted below, and it's free. Thank you guys for watching, because legacy isn't built during the storm, it's built before one.